It was the summer of 1987. It seemed like an ordinary day was happening in Knightsbridge, one of the most luxurious areas of London. However, no one knew that a robbery that would go down in history would take place that day. Valerio Viccei, who had moved to London from Italy and wanted to live his life in wealth, was already a famous name in the world of crime. He had committed more than 50 armed robberies in Italy. Now he had a bigger plan in London. Valerio had set his sights on a private safe deposit box in Knightsbridge. There were millions of pounds worth of cash and valuables stored there. However, he couldn't do this job alone. He needed someone on the inside to carry out the plan flawlessly. That person was Parvez Latif. Parvez Latif worked in a safe deposit box and owed money to Viccei. It was impossible for him to pay off his debt by working, so his only option was to help him. Viccei and Parvez came up with a perfect plan together. On July 12, 1987, Viccei entered the bank with an accomplice. They pretended to be a regular customer and said they wanted to rent a safe. When the guards let them in, the second phase of the plan began. They drew their guns. They took the people inside hostage and locked the door and hung the close sign. Now they had time to carry out the robbery. Viccei and his team had completely taken control inside. The hostages were afraid to move. The most critical moment of the robbery had begun, the opening of the safes one by one. The other accomplices who had entered began to open the safes as they had planned. Each safe that was opened was literally spilling out a fortune with the money, gold, and jewels inside. There was a total of £60 million worth of loot, or about $100 million in today's money. Everything was going as planned. However, one of their biggest mistakes was not noticing how time passed. The robbery was complete. The robbers had opened as many safes as they could and collected all the valuables inside. Everything was going well. Viccei and his team left the bank quietly. The employees who realized that they had disappeared immediately notified the police. When the police arrived at the scene and started their investigation, they noticed a strange detail inside. It was a bloody fingerprint. This was Viccei's biggest mistake. No one should have left a trace behind, but a small cut in a moment of panic had prepared the end for Viccei. The police quickly identified the owner of this fingerprint. Now a big chase was starting. When Viccei learned that the police were after him, he quickly decided to escape from London. He fled to Latin America, where he disappeared for a long time. He escaped, but his friends were caught. It was only a matter of time before he was caught. The British police and Interpol were after him. In fact, Viccei, who had skillfully disappeared, would lose his freedom because of his passion for cars. When he returned to London to once again drive his beloved Ferrari and Mercedes, it was only a matter of time before the police caught him. A tip-off led to his location and Viccei was caught red-handed. Viccei's capture brought an end to one of the biggest bank robberies in British history. Viccei was sentenced to 22 years in prison and served his sentence in Parkhurst Prison on the Isle of Wight. In 1992, he was deported to Italy to serve the rest of his sentence. He was sent to an open prison in Pescara, where he was allowed to live the lifestyle he was used to and run a translation company. On April 19, 2000, Viccei was shot dead by police during a prison riot. The Knightsbridge robbery was recorded as the biggest bank robbery in British history at the time, but it was a lesson for criminal organizations around the world. No matter how perfectly you plan, the smallest trace you leave behind could be your last.